Hi everyone, I'm Baihan Lin from Columbia University. I'm presenting our work, Unified Models of Human Behavioral Agents in Bandits, Contextual Bandits, and Reinforcement Learning. This is a work done at IBM Research with Guillermo, Cecchi, Djallel, Bouneffouf, Jenna, and Irina, Rish. Human decision-making is quite different from traditional reinforcement learning. At each state, the available actions all have their corresponding reward and cost. A reinforcement learning agent aims to find the optimal policy to maximize the marginal rewards in all future scenarios. While the human minds undergo a much more complicated processes, the cost and rewards can come in different aspects and thus yielding different ways to find the optimal policy. For instance, one might not worry too much of certain costs, or one might ignore the rewards of certain types. The time scale for human decision-making process is also different. Some might focus on the present-day pleasure without caring too much about the long-term benefits. These are all reward biases hidden in each person's characters and idiosyncrasies. In another word, it is not that simple. Insights from neuroscience and psychiatry concur with this intuition. The reward system of the brain often involves multiple brain regions that represent prediction error and values in various circuitries and mechanisms. These interacting systems drive downstream behaviors like motivation, approach behavior, and action selection. In clinical literature, many neuropsychiatric disorders are known to be involved with different types of reward processing. Presented here are a subset of these neuropsychiatric conditions, including Parkinson's disorders, addiction, Alzheimer's disease, chronic pain, dementia, and ADHD. From the evolutionary psychiatry point of view, we can also view different mental disorders as extreme points in a continuous spectrum of behaviors and traits developed for various purposes during the evolutionary process. Some of less extreme versions of these traits can actually be beneficial in specific environments. For instance, an ADHD-like fast-switching attention can be life-saving in certain environments. Therefore, modeling these disease-related reward biases can help us build better AI systems. Now, let's get back to the traditional reinforcement learning problem, where we usually have an agent in a certain state, it makes an action given its current policy, and the environment reveals the next state as well as a reward. We in this paper are more interested in the reward processing mechanisms of the agents, which drives its learning as well as its action selection. In the reinforcement learning setting, we are given the reward parameters and the environment, and we wish to learn an optimal policy, or the agent itself. In the inverse reinforcement learning setting, we are given the reward parameters and the policy, or we are given a behavior trajectory, and we aim to discover the reward function of the environment. In the behavior modeling setting, on the other hand, we are usually given a behavior trajectory and the environment payoffs, and we wish to infer the reward parameters that drives the agent to its current state in that specific trajectories. To accomplish all three problem settings, we propose the two-stream processing mechanism. In multi-arm bandits, each action has a mapping to its reward. In contextual bandits, the reward mapping of each action is dependent on the current context. In the full reinforcement learning setting, each action changes the current state, and the reward mapping depends on multiple contexts in different states. In each setting, the rewards are separated into the positive domain and the negative domain. The agent picks the actions given the representations from both streams and yields effect on the states or context in both streams. In the bandit setting, we proposed human-based Thompson sampling. Human-based Thompson sampling extends upon the Thompson sampling by introducing a two-stream reward processing mechanisms. It assumes that the reward comes in two streams, and each stream of the reward went through the learning process independently of the other stream. We introduce 4 tunable parameters for the two streams. First, we have 2 parameters for the weights on the reward history. A smaller parameter would mean that we discount the past more. And we have 2 parameters to account for the reward perception. A bigger parameter of this would mean that the reward of this stream is amplified in a certain degree. Similarly, in the Contextual Bandit setting, we proposed split contextual Thompson sampling, which extends upon the contextual Thompson sampling. In the reinforcement learning setting, we proposed split Q learning, which extends upon the Q learning. Given this setup, we can simulate different neuropsychiatric conditions with our model based on the clinical literature. For instance, the chronic pain has a larger weight on the certain negative stream than the positive stream. The diction forgets about the negative history faster than the other agents. The Parkinson's patient behavior are often more associated with the magnified perception of the negative reward or the pain. Other than these mental agents, we also have a moderate version that we called M, a standard version, and 2 single-streamed variants which we called positive speak and negative speak QL. First, we tested our approach on a simulated multi-arm bandit scenario and the Markov decision process with some not-so-Gaussian reward distributions. For instance, here we have 5 states. From the initial state A, we can either choose to go left or right, and from there, the next section can sample the reward from certain distributions. Presented here is an example scenario, where the reward distributions are 2 bimodal distributions. As shown, the orange arm or the right arm have a better expected reward. Over 500 iterations, we observe that our speed Q learning outperforms the Q learning and double Q learning in the speed to converge to the right arm, as well as its accumulated final reward over 500 iterations. The second row gave us an even more inside look of what's really going on in the Q tables of both streams, where we can see that the split mechanisms offered a robust regularization to the Q value estimation. We also tested our models on the Iowa gambling tasks, which is a very popular psychology experiment to model human decision-making. The agents gets to choose from one of the 4 decks of cards trying to maximize its final reward. Computationally, it is a multi-arm bandit task with 4 arms, with 2 arms as better arms for given a better expected payoff. As in the reward distribution plot shown here, we see that the reward distribution is highly non-Gaussian, where the Q-learning would usually underperform. In this paper, we compared 2 most common payoff schemes for the IL gambling tasks, which we called IGT scheme 1 and 2. We soon see that the split QL backbone does a great job distinguishing the mental agents from one another. The short-term dynamics here, shown as the percentage of actions choosing the better decks, demonstrated interesting trajectories. For instance, take a close look at the addiction, which is the black curve. It picked up the better decks most rapidly, but as time goes on, it was caught up by the others. This is due to the fact that it doesn't carry much memory for the negative rewards, and thus tending to stick to the short-term reward payoff. The T-SNE plots of these behavior trajectories are also demonstrated here, that these agents actually form little clusters labeled by their reward biases. We also observed a few universalities in the mental variant of 3 levels of reinforcement learning. Several clinically inspired conditions demonstrated similar short-term and long-term dynamics. In addition, we tested our approach on the PacMan game in the non-stationary setting. For the positive and negative streams, we installed 3 independent non-stationarities. In the reward muting scenario, we randomly mute one, both, or neither stream. For instance, if the positive stream is muted, eating a packed dot would receive a reward of 0 now. In a reward scaling scenario, we randomly amplify one, both, or neither streams of the reward. For instance, if a positive stream is scaled, each reward is 100 times larger than before. In reward flipping, we randomly flip one, both, or neither stream of the reward. For instance, if the positive stream is flipped, each reward is now the negative amount of that reward. To simulate a lifelong learning setting, we have this stochastic change happen every n rounds. Here we see that the orange curve is our SpeakQL agent. The average score over 1000 iterations demonstrated that the SpeakQL is very competitive in the stationary setting and beats baseline almost all non-stationary settings. If we look closer in the reward flipping scenario, we also kind of validated our evolutionary psychiatry understanding that several mental variants of SpeakQL performs even better than SpeakQL itself and all the baselines. For instance, the ADHD agent, due to its fast switching biases, adapts quite well in this non-stationary condition. Similarly, in the Contextual Bandit setting, we let different Contextual Bandit algorithms play in the game. It demonstrated a similar behavior as the reinforcement learning setting. Here are some mental agents in actions after 1000 iterations of training. We can see even more interesting behaviors going on. Take a close look at the chronic pain agent. It doesn't seem to care much about the reward, so it only moves whenever an imminent threat is present, to avoid being eaten by the ghost. The diction agent, on the other hand, only cares of eating as much dots as possible, even if that means going behind the ghost in a dangerously close distance. There are many interesting results from here. We aim to further investigate optimal reward biases in different scenarios. For instance, if the objective function is surviving the longest versus having the highest score. We're also interested in multiple reward-biased agents interacting in the same arena. We are also learning the reward biases parameters from real patient data in order to better tune our models for clinical applications. Last but not least, we are going deep to test the two-stream mechanisms in deep Q networks. The broader motivation of this work is to increase the two-way traffic between artificial intelligence and neuropsychiatry, in the hope that a deeper understanding of brain mechanisms revealed by how they function as in the neural part and dysfunction as in the psychiatry part can provide for better AI models, and conversely, AI can help to conceptualize the otherwise bewildering complexity of the brain. This two-way conversation has led to 3 major research projects of ours. First, based on the clinical behavior data, we can compare different computational models or hypotheses proposed for different mental disorders. Simulation results of the AI candidate models can then offer us more mechanistic insights into these conditions. Second, given this data, we can also fit and train neural-inspired AI models that can better mimic human behaviors. Third, we can create interactive systems that allow for patients to play simple games and yield clinically meaningful indicators in support of mental health monitoring. Thank you for your interest. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. The full paper can be easily accessed on arXiv, and the codes are all available at our GitHub repository. Thank you for your time.